In this video, I'm going to take you through the 5 worst pieces of advice that you can listen to as a debut feature filmmaker. I think if you listen to even one of these pieces of advice, you're going to seriously hinder your ability to make a feature film, a debut feature film, and then start building up a career in the film industry. So let's take you through them one by one so that you can really understand what they are. Number 1 on the list of worst pieces of advice is that you shouldn't invest in your film. So I've been told that this advice stems from a college or a university out in LA, and there is a thing that they teach, or there's a statement that they teach, which is don't invest your own money in your own films. And I think that's really bad advice, because if you're not willing to invest your own money into your film, no matter how small that amount of money might be, then why should someone else invest? Not only that, when you're starting out as a feature filmmaker, it's very hard to go out and raise finance, to raise private equity, or to get, even a more established producer on board your project. And the reason is because you don't have a track record. And so if you listen to that advice and you didn't invest any of your money into your film and you simply waited for the opportunity for someone to give you money, well, what if that never happens? What if that never comes? And so in my view, you're much better off having control of your destiny, of your creative destiny. And the best way to do that is to take your hard-earned cash, put it into your own projects, whether it's development or production funding, get those projects going, prove yourself, and then use that track record to then level up in your career. So that's number 1. Number 2 is the idea that you can't make El Mariachi today. So El Mariachi, for those that don't know, is a film by Robert Rodriguez. It was made in 1993 or released around then. And he basically went and shot this film in Mexico for around $7,000 US. And there's this kind of idea floating around now that, well, that's all well and good, but you just couldn't do that today. There's no way that could happen. You just wouldn't be, it just economically doesn't make sense and can't be done. And I think that as soon as you make those types of statements, you're completely just shutting off your mind from any type of creative thinking or problem solving, or any kind of divergent thinking, anything like that. And so I think that advice is really dangerous, because it really just shuts off the creative process before it even gets started, right? Before you can even start thinking of okay, well, how could we do this? If we had to do it, what would that look like? And is there a way that we can do it while telling a great story? And so that piece of advice, I think, can be really dangerous. And so I'd encourage you that if you are thinking about making a micro budget film, to go through the process and really try and work out how to do it. The lowest budget film that I've ever made is $55K in terms of the budget that got us to the end of the edit. And so, obviously that's much bigger than 7,000. But if we firstly take the 7K and adjust it for inflation, it's probably more like 15K. And then if you think of something like Paranormal Activity, which wasn't made that long ago, that was made on a very small budget. Now, granted, once the film was finished, they raised some more money to finish it. But the idea is that you could go out and produce a film, get it to an edit, and then go and pitch it at a really micro budget. Number 3 is that you should develop lots of projects at the same time in the hope that one of them will hit and one of them will be ready at one time. And I think this is actually one of the worst pieces of advice that you can receive and that you can actually listen to particularly when you're starting out. So the idea that you should have all these projects going on at all these different stages and you should split up your time is, to me, kind of crazy, because if you're a filmmaker, particularly when you're starting out, there's no way that you're working full-time as a filmmaker. You're probably running a business or freelancing or working for someone else. And so you only have so much time in the day to actually work on a film. And so if you take that limited time, let's say it's even 8 hours a week, if you then split that between 4 projects, well, now each of your projects is only getting 2 hours of your attention each week. And if you're splitting that time as you're working, like how deep is that work? You know, how focused is that work? How much are you really getting into the characters and the stories and the theme? And if you're doing those things and then you're trying to go and raise finance for the film on top of that, well, then you're not only adding like these multiple projects, but now they're all at different stages. And so now it's like you're not only developing, but you're financing, and you're trying to do so many different things at the same time. So the idea of having this diverse slate or this, many projects at the same time, I think really doesn't work. My view on it is that you should really spend the time deciding on which project you want to commit to. Look at some different factors, like even just basics on which one are you most passionate about, which one has the best chance of getting financed, which one can you execute given your resources. Those are like three really important questions that you should ask, and they relate to creative, finance, and budget, right? The three like important things when you're thinking about how to actually finance and produce a film. And if you ask yourself those and you spend the time deciding on the right project, and then when you decide you go all in, you're just relentless on getting that project up, then that project is going to get like all your time and attention. And in my experience making films, that's always how I've approached it. My development slate is very small. Like at the moment, I only have one film in development. There are other projects that I'm like looking at and reading and taking my time to decide whether I'll, choose them as the one to come after that. But in terms of films in development, just one. Because I know that when we get to the end of development and I have to go and raise finance, I can't be doing that with multiple films. It's so hard to raise finance that if you're trying to do that with heaps of projects, it's just not going to work. So a great example of this as well from another industry is looking at how investors invest in in companies. And of course, there's the VC model, right, where they invest in startups and they take a bunch of companies, they invest amounts in each of them, and what they're hoping is that like one goes gangbusters, 3 break even, or whatever it is, and then the rest all lose money. Now that's one way to do it, but if you look at the best investors in the history, if you look at Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, well, their strategy is completely different. They hate diversification. They spend all their time deciding on which companies are the best to invest in. Sometimes they don't invest. Sometimes they take years to invest. But when they do, they go all in. They throw all their resources behind it. And that's why their company, Berkshire Hathaway, is like one of the most valuable companies in the world. And so I think we can learn from that example and apply it particularly in the early stages of our career when our resources are more limited and more scarce. So it's number 3. Number 4 is it's not what you know, it's who you know. So again, I think this is a piece of advice that it could stop you before you even start. Because if you listen to this advice and you think it's true and you believe it to be true, and you feel like you don't have contacts, you don't have the right network, then you might just give up before you even start, right? You might just look at your current situation and say, well, I don't have these relationships, I don't have this network, I don't have these contacts. So, and if it's who you know, not what you know, it doesn't matter that I know all these things, I don't know these people, and so I'm doomed to fail. And I think, again, that's a really dangerous way to think for a few reasons. So number 1, if that was true, it would have to hold true in all circumstances, right? You wouldn't be able to falsify it. And I think a great example of this in the film industry where you can falsify it is film festivals. So, everyone says that it's important to know festival programmers or festival selectors. And don't get me wrong, it is important because it can kind of just make sure that potentially the right people are looking at your film, right? But if your film isn't good, it doesn't matter that you know those people. It's irrelevant because if your film's no good, they're not going to select it. So who you know can really only get you so far. And it's much more important. I think the what you know is way more important, because if you know how to make a great film, it's going to get noticed by the right people. And And on the flip side, if you know the right people, even if you've made a bad film, it doesn't matter that you knew those people. They're not going to select it. And so the same is kind of true for all of the factors or all the aspects of filmmaking. Because who you know these days as well is like so different to what it was, like, let's say pre-internet, or maybe even like pre-social media. There are so many ways to contact someone today and to find their contact information. Like, you can use Google, you can use LinkedIn, you can use databases now, like software. There's one called Seamless.ai, if you haven't heard of it. Rocket Reach is another one. Sonando is an industry one. Like, there are just so many ways to find people's contact details. It's really not that hard. But if you find that person's contact details, when you get in touch with them, it's the project that's going to do the talking. And that's what really has to kind of blow them away at that point. Number 5 on the list is that you need a proof of concept to finance a feature film. And again, this is something that can be a really big point of distraction for you when you're trying to finance a film. And so the way that I would think about a proof of concept and when it can be beneficial versus not is that if you're developing, let's say you've developed your film, you've got a screenplay. So now you're at the point where you need to raise finance. If you then decide that you need to go shoot a proof of concept before you raise finance, then you're going to have to incur the cost of doing that. There's going to be heaps of time that's involved. It's going to take your attention away from actually financing the main film. And you're probably going to lose like 6 months, let's say, or even 3 months doing it. That's still a decent chunk of time. So the way that I think about this is it necessary to have a proof of concept to finance a film? If it was necessary, that would mean that no film ever was financed without a proof of concept. And that's just not true. We know that that's not true. So the idea that you need a proof of concept we can kind of cancel that out. Right. So then the next way to think about it is, would it be beneficial to have a proof of concept? And I think that we can really think about this in a logical way to come to the decision about whether you should shoot a proof of concept. So the way I think about it is this kind of like decision tree. So it's number 1, do you have short films that you can show people that will convey your tone, your style, your creative vision for a project? Like, do you have some sort of body of work that you could show a potential producer, distributor, financier, just who you are as a filmmaker? If you have those things, you don't need a proof of concept, because that's all a proof of concept does. A proof of concept really just shows off the style, tone, and kind of flexes your creative muscles in front of the potential investor. But if you have those things, and you don't need to go and shoot a proof of concept to do it. So that's number 1. And then if you don't have those things, right? If you don't have any, like you've never made short films, or you're coming into it fresh into the industry, then I think in that case, like a proof of concept can be beneficial. Because if you have no body of work, if you have no track record, and you're pitching someone to invest in your project, the first thing that they're going to look at is, well, what have you done before? And if you have nothing, then it may help in that circumstance to have a proof of concept. But most people watching this video have made short films, and they will have built up a body of work, and it could be short films, commercials, music videos, really like all of those things that really just show who you are as a filmmaker creatively. And if you have those things, you don't need to go and shoot a proof of concept. You can really focus on the script and then get out there and raise finance. So those are the 5 pieces of advice. I recommend that you don't listen to any of them, and that you in fact do the opposite of most of those pieces of advice, and that should put you in a really good position to get your first film up into production and then start building a career. All right, that's it. We'll see you on the next one.